My name is Kresimir Peharda. I'm a partner with YK Law. I do a lot of work on stock option plans, executive compensation, employment agreements, phantom stock plans, and the like. And I'm pleased to have two other speakers here today who will start us off. So with that, Jeremy and Kevin, you guys want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do intros for me and Kevin. I'll get our presentation started, and then I'll hand it off to Kevin to finish it up. Kresimir, thanks for starting it off. So I'll do a quick intro of myself, Kevin, and our team. So we're part of a regional firm called Capstone. We have about 15 offices throughout the West Coast. All the advisors at Capstone run their own businesses. Some advisors have more broad practices than others, while others are very specialized. I've been in the business now for just over 5 years. Born and raised in SoCal, went to Pepperdine for college. I got my undergrad in business and then received my MBA with the concentration in finance there. So I knew that this was, during my early years in college, I knew this was a business I wanted to get in right away. So a few weeks after graduating, I started my own practice. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I wanted to become one myself, and then obviously get the opportunity to work with them every day and help them solve problems. Kevin was born and raised in Orange County, has about 17 years of experience in the financial services business. And he played football at Boston College, earned his master's degree there in finance, and then his bachelor's was in English. And before starting his business under Capstone, Kevin worked at Merrill and some other companies, mainly in the investment management space. But now Kevin possesses he has an expertise in like financial products and strategies within private businesses. And this expertise extends to things like buy-sell agreement planning, key person, risk mitigation, employee benefits, and executive compensation strategies. Kevin, about 3 years ago, you and I partnered up?
That's right.
Yep. After realizing our philosophies around the business were aligned, and together we have about 4 staff along with other strategic partners, and we really just aimed to provide holistic wealth and risk management services to craft plans for people and their businesses, really to help them, realize their vision. And the mission that we like to serve is to find what success means for each person, and then allow them to become successful at what they feel is right for them. Right on. So I'll jump into the first slide. Let's see. Cool. So there we go. Okay. So the focus of today's webinar is really to talk about strategies on how to retain key talent and employees. So the types of strategies that we'll talk about today aren't for every employee in a business. Okay, these are for the employees who may be hard to replace, right? Or they have a special standing in the business, right? So think about things like their experience, their specialty, maybe the revenue they bring in if they're a salesperson, or we see it even with family members too, right? And so looking at this slide here, right, the items on the left side, I'm sure everyone is a little bit more familiar with. So these are the tools that businesses will usually use to attract new people, right? So salary, group benefits, bonuses, those are a lot more familiar than those things, I'm sure, those are a lot more familiar than those things on the right-hand side. And so, between Kresimir's firm and our firm, we can help set up everything that you see on the slide, but really for today, we're just going to be focusing on a few concepts on the right. Particularly, Kresimir will be talking about the phantom stock, and then we'll be talking about executive and leverage bonus, and then what non-qualified deferred comp is. So Kevin and I will go over our slides first, and then we'll go ahead and pass it off to Kresimir, and he'll finish it for us. And the concepts that Kevin and I will be going over are specifically structured life insurance policies. Once educated on these, people like the tax efficiencies, the selectiveness, and the ease of administering once set up too. And then throughout Kevin's slides, he can add a little bit more color if he wants to. But so first, I'll go over the benefits of an executive bonus plan. So executive bonus plan here, I can't highlight. Okay. So our slides for compliance reasons are a little bit wordier than what we would like. But I'll go ahead and kind of just summarize the benefits for the business owner and then the benefits for the employee. So for the business owner, right, or the business, it's a retention tool that provides benefits just above like salary and group benefits, right? So these can be selective, meaning that they don't have to be for every employee, right? And then along with that, if there are several employees in a business who have something like this, they don't all have to be at the same level, okay? And there's minimal implementation and administrative expenses. So basically these don't require any approval from the IRS, or you don't have to file them under ERISA. And then for the business, it's also a tax deduction, okay? And then the plans are flexible. So the plans are flexible, and you also have the ability to have it be on so it's like incentive or tenure based, right? So you could set this up, but if someone doesn't qualify, it's not like they end up getting the money. All right. Sorry, let me see this real quick. So the benefits for the employee. Okay, so again, they are structured within life insurance policies, and the employee gets to designate the beneficiary. Okay, just like how standard or how like normal life insurance is if you were to if someone were to pass while this is in place, the benefits are usually paid out tax-free. Okay, if used in retirement, the employee can take it out income tax-free if done properly. They can also use it for healthcare costs, and then the benefits aren't subject to business creditors. All right, so I'll pass it off to Kevin. I'll let him walk through how these are usually structured.
Great. So I think one of the things to highlight on why people use executive bonus plans are some of the points that Jeremy touched on, and I'll walk back through them and then outline how these operate. So one is it's a discretionary or a discriminatory bonus plan, meaning that there are no rules to be followed by the employer. You can choose the employees that you want to participate in plans like this. And to Jeremy's point, you can even customize those plans specifically per employee. So 2 employees at the same level could end up with different plans for a variety of reasons. Also too, as you see on the screen here, this is the outline of how the executive bonus plan works. So the bonus plan, there's a documented bonus agreement to the employee, and the employee pays taxes on the bonus when the bonus is provided. The bonus is an annual life insurance premium into a cash value life insurance policy, which is owned by the employee. That's an important factor because that premium payment creating a benefit to the employee is a transfer of business-owned money to the employee-owned asset. And that creates an ability for the employer to receive a deduction for the bonus program, and for the employee, as Jeremy stated earlier, to own not only the death benefit and the beneficiary selection, but also the cash value inside the insurance contract. So this is a very straightforward executive bonus plan. If you don't have experience with cash value life insurance, one of the things that I would also mention for private business owners is that the life insurance policy's cash value becomes more and more appealing in years 3, 4, and 5, meaning the value of the cash value grows more rapidly years 3, 4, 5, and beyond. So in a sense, it's a form of a light golden handcuff, as that the longer an employee stays, the greater amount of money they receive from the bonus agreement into the cash value aspect of the insurance contract. Anything else to add here, Jeremy, before we go to the next slide?
No, I think that was great.
With the executive bonus, there are a variety of different strategies that can be used to help the employee fully realize the benefit. So in a scenario where we made a $10,000 per year executive bonus, you'll note that in this scenario, George has to pay taxes on the bonus. If we estimate George is in the 30% tax bracket, it's $3,000 in income taxes. Well, most employers will follow what we call a double bonus arrangement, where they will provide not only the executive premium for the executive bonus of $10,000, but they'll also include the additional tax liability, so the employee doesn't have to come personally out of pocket to execute on the bonus program. So in this scenario, you can see here we've illustrated the double bonus scenario with a $14,286 bonus to provide a $10,000 benefit. Now, the company gets to deduct the full value of the double bonus, $14,286, as they've provided now $4,286 of tax liability on the employee's behalf on the $10,000. This leads us to sort of an advanced strategy using executive bonus, which we find to be very enticing to companies, which is, instead of creating the bonus of $4,286 as part of the employee compensation, many of our clients choose to loan their employees the tax liability. This loan creates a leverage bonus arrangement, which you've noted below. It's a private note due to the company, collateralized by the cash value of the life insurance. This further creates more of a traditional golden handcuff arrangement, where the employees incentivize substantially as their longevity meets with the company. I think that's a really important part of this executive bonus, is we're looking to give fixed benefits to employees that we'd like to retain long-term. We're providing them with benefits that incentivize their longevity of employment in the company. And that's a critical point, because as all of our business owners know, and through our human resource research, replacing employees is expensive and time consuming for a business, and in placing high level performing executives has even a higher cost to the company. So creating an executive bonus program for specific employees can really create a moat around those employees and make an enticement to maintain employment for a longer period of time. The leverage executive bonus, that borrowed money, again creates that bond between the company and the employee. And there are a variety of ways that the policy and the employee and the employer could deal with that debt in the future. It could be a verbal agreement to forgive the debt at a certain period in advance, or if the employee were to ever leave, the debt is collateralized again by the cash value, so the company is not in any circumstance going to be harmed by an employee walking away in a short time frame. This type of strategy really just involves deep fact finding with your business and business owners about who are the most critical people to the organization and what kind of executive benefits might entice them for longevity in the company. Jeremy, any thoughts or comments before we move to the non-qualified deferred compensation?
No, I'll move on to the non-qualified deferred comp.
So the executive bonus really is the starter program for unique bonus programs for key employees and executives. reasons being that it's very low in compliance, very straightforward bonus arrangement, a 162 bonus arrangement, an insurance contract, possibly a loan ledger, but really a minimal amount of annual compliance for those policies to be enforced and to be effective. The next step in executive compensation would be fall under the name of non-qualified deferred compensation. Really quite a mouthful, but if we break it down, non-qualified meaning outside of your ERISA qualified retirement plans, which would be 401k, profit sharing, cash balance, and defined benefit. So it's not under the ERISA code, non-qualified, deferred in the future compensation. And really what a non-qualified deferred compensation arrangement is, it's a contract between an employee and the company to provide income in the future. Again, these contracts are completely customizable, so you can design any strategy you like for the employee's benefit. I'll give an example of some of the usages that we've used in the past to do this. One would be a long-serving employee who you'd like to entice to retire at your company. So a year ago, we had two employees, married couple, had been running the company for the owner for about 20 years. They're in their early 50s and we're potentially looking at other employment arrangements to find additional compensation, during the Great Resignation. The employer wanted to retain them through retirement. And so the contract we designed, if the employees stay through age 64, so to age 65, they'll receive $50,000 a year in retirement income for 20 years. So each employee would receive $1 million total in the future for keeping their employment through retirement age 64. This created an excellent scenario for both the employer, as they've locked in financial incentives and shown those employees the value of retaining or maintaining employment and running the company. And they've showed the employees the value of how the company values their contributions and their opportunities in the future. So non-qualified deferred compensation is a promise to pay in the future. As Jeremy mentioned earlier, our strategies we're outlining are typically underwritten with permanent cash value life insurance. For the non-qualified deferred compensation, the promise to pay in the future also requires the company to pay if the employee were to become disabled or to pass away prematurely. So the life insurance aspects, the insurance aspects of the permanent life insurance, offering a disability waiver to complete the funding and or a death benefit can soften the burden of those scenarios for the employer. And then the cash value of a life insurance contract can be reverse engineered to provide that future income stream to a very tight delta, as the permanent life insurance contracts that we're using for this scenario do not have market exposure. So they have the ability to understand the future values of the contracts to provide the benefit. You can go to the next page, Jeremy. So again, we're talking about attracting talented people to the organization, right? And retaining key employees. Again, these are customized future incomes where the employer has to meet longevity requirements to acquire those benefits. It's a selective fringe benefit. So it can be discriminatory, meaning choosing specific employees that are most important, or offering to new hires to entice them to come over, or oftentimes used for family member employees to be selective about the benefit of that company to them in the future. And they do offer simple administration, so they're not subject to Treasury Department approval or IRS, but the contract does need to be designed and written. So there is a more formal document that needs to be ironed out with a corporate attorney. Luckily, you have one on this call who would be capable of supporting you in that facet. And to give you a second scenario, if Jeremy, if you want to go one page further, a second scenario that we've used executive compensation for is on planned exits from businesses. Many times our business owner clients, as they prepare to exit their business, they have a management team that to attain the full value of the business. They really want that management team to stay in place through the transition. They also want to ensure that there's some security for their management team as a new owner takes over. So designing a non-qualified deferred comp agreement that has a timing outside of the exit of the business. So for example, we plan to exit in 3 years and we make a 3 to 5 year contractual agreement that if the employee, makes it through the 3 to 5 year time frame, they'll get additional executive benefits, additional promise compensation, can really help the employer or the owner retain those key executives through a process where there might be clawbacks, et cetera, from the new owner for the exiting owner. So it can be a strategic tool to help, again, entice longevity, even over a short period, 3, 4, 5 years for an employee. I'll pause there and ask Jeremy again if you have anything to add. And I know that when Kresimir finishes, we can stay on to answer any questions, but appreciate your guys' attention to the topic so far.
Yeah, nothing much to add. I guess I would just piggyback on the usually, right? I mean, especially what I've seen is just high turnover, right? Especially during COVID, right? Where companies, it's really hard to hire right now. And I mean, I talked to a guy yesterday who's probably switched 3 companies in 3 years, right? And he's a highly compensated guy, but there's just no loyalty really, because the next company is just going to pay him more money, right? So in situations like that, it is a scenario where he's getting a salary of X, but then he realizes if he stays there for 5 years longer, 10 years longer, whatever the time frame is, that there's kind of that bucket at the end that he's also going to have access to. Just want to add that, but I'll pass it off to Kresimir.
Great point, Jeremy. And I like the fixed long term, but I think also what Kresimir is going to talk about now is more enticing to employees is, how do I participate in the upside of the business? So I'm excited to hear the presentation as well.
Yeah, that was great, guys. Thanks for that. All right, I will start sharing my screen. And before I do, just to let everybody know, this is not legal advice. This is for informational purposes only. Only upon the execution of a engagement agreement do we have an attorney-client relationship. So that's my disclaimer. All right. Let's see here. I'm having a few problems with my screen share. If there's anything you guys want to add, give me a couple of minutes to fix my screen share.
I know this isn't, I know this probably wouldn't be ideal for you, but if you wanted to email it to me, I could try to go through it if you're having some issues pulling it up or something.
Sure.
I'll add a couple things as well too, Chris.
Sure, I'll do that.
What I found is that a lot of times as a small business owner, entrepreneur, even into the mid-sized business, oftentimes these strategies, which are used very regularly by larger publicly traded competitors or larger private companies, is still very new concept to the business owner. So how do you go about determining, hey, what are my strategies? What could I use for this? So the different strategies are two that we outlined, encompass only a small part of about 8 to 10 strategies that we've used for executive compensation. So the first piece of this is to, one, identify potentially key employees in your organization. You can look at key employees in a few ways. Somebody that you would absolutely hate to get an email from on a Friday afternoon saying, I'm taking this email as my notice of termination over the next 2 to 2 months. So people that have unique skill sets that are difficult to replace, people that have been long serving, who you'd like to reward for being around and being part of the success of the business. Once you've developed that list of people, we would then encourage you to think about the financial outcomes for that specific individual. So interestingly, different people have different needs in their lives. If you had a 35-year-old executive with 2 teenagers or two preteens, things that might be relevant to them would be, providing income, at the college age availability of their children, so that you could create a college supplemental income plan for them. So if your child goes to, a local university and need $40,000, $50,000 a year, instead of creating a retirement benefit for a 35-year-old, which, not saying that it's not nice, but it's so far in the future, it's hard for them to value, versus, hey, we're going to provide you $25,000 a year of tax-free money when we know your kids are going to be between the ages of 18 and 22, and that's going to be an 8-year window. So if you maintain employment through the next 6 years, you'll qualify for those benefits, and every year that you serve, $25,000 can be contractually obligated to be paid to you net of tax outside of your regular salary, bonus, etc. So it's very customizable. So thinking about who would be on the list, what would be important to them, what kind of funding could be done with the company, and then I think engaging your corporate attorney or a specialist like ourselves and say, okay, now I'm having some ideas, because there's different structures for if we want deductions for the business now or in the future. There's different strategies, as you saw, the executive bonus, the double bonus, the leverage bonus strategy. And I think really at that point, it makes sense to bring in a specialist. Let me pause there, Kresimir, and I can keep rambling if you'd like, but hopefully you're getting ready to go now.
So Jeremy, are you able to pull that up?
I have not received it. I just checked my phone and my email.
Okay. All right. Let me try that again. Yeah, I show it as having gone through.
Is it? Trying to think why it's not letting you share the screen from your computer. Would it allow you to share another document? Is it just restricting the PowerPoint?
Yeah, just my settings are off.
Huh. Okay.
So if you're able to pull it up, that will work.
Yeah. Sometimes those longer documents just take a bit to get to me.
Okay, well, let me start in on it so we
Okay.
kind of preserve our time here.
Yeah.
So a phantom stock plan is a specific example of really what we talked about, deferred compensation. And what makes it unusual is that it's tied to the value of common stock usually, or can be a unit in an LLC. And what makes it interesting is that it doesn't create equity ownership or ownership interest in the entity itself, but it's really a synthetic or derivative interest in, there we go, in the underlying worth, if you will, of the company. So that's a really interesting twist, as opposed to what you traditionally see would be things like stock options or restricted stock and the like. So yeah, if we can go to the next page. Yeah, so the key frequently for owners is the piece about not providing equity ownership. And the nice thing for the employee is that really for them, there's no out-of-pocket and there's no obligation at the outset. It's just really a nice incentive at some point down the road. So let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so why would a company use phantom stock versus actual stock? So I touched on the first point, which is, or the last point here, there's no investment required, right? So if you're a key employee, then this is just something you get. Other than performing services, being associated with the company as an employee, director, or consultant, there's nothing extra needed from you. So there's no cash outlay. So that's a huge advantage. Another reason would be sometimes companies don't have enough authorized shares of capital stock, and they don't want to go back and amend their articles to increase the number to allow for additional shares to be issued. Sometimes owners don't want to dilute the existing cap table, and granting phantom stock at the outset does not dilute the cap table at all. There is a dilutive effect at the end, of course, because you're potentially on an exit sharing with the holder of the phantom stock, but not at the outset. Another big reason that I've seen is if an employee leaves, do you really want them owning stock in your company if you're a private company? And the answer is usually no. But phantom stock essentially provides all the upside without actually having that person own the stock. And then in terms of cost and time required, usually these phantom stock plans are relatively simple. I mean, there's an award agreement that goes with it, but a lot of times they're actually simpler and more straightforward than even stock option plans and restricted stock plans. So you do avoid having to draft shareholder agreements or buy-sell agreements or voting agreements that you would typically find if the person were getting restricted stock or as a grant or coming on as an owner. And finally, related to all that is because the person who gets the award of phantom stock is not an equity owner, they have no voting rights. So you don't get into issues of all of a sudden there's another person or persons to think about in the mix, especially on key decisions or decisions that maybe the original owners don't want other people having input on. Next slide, please. So who can receive phantom stock? In some ways, pretty simple, and in other ways, a little confusing. So it's typically going to be an employee, could potentially be a consultant or a director, but most commonly you have employees. And if you're trying to really avoid ERISA and RISA issues, you need to think about this term of art they call the select group of management or highly compensated employees. Of course, who that is, it's going to depend from company to company. That would certainly typically be folks like the CEO, perhaps CFO, COO, depending on the company. Could be a chief revenue officer, chief talent officer, chief technology officer, all those kind of C-suite type of people, or even a key salesperson or key marketing person. But it's meant to be a small group of folks, not more than a couple of percent of the total employees. So it's not meant to be typically widespread use, not given out to every single employee. That's a different concept. Next slide, please. So requirements are kind of interesting because technically there aren't that many requirements other than having that select group of highly compensated folks. But typically, you need a base kind of information in your plan and award agreement. So you need a board or committee who's going to administer the plan. You have to, one of the decisions, of course you can have both, is the type of phantom stock you're going to provide, and the choice is essentially full value or appreciation only. So meaning with appreciation only, the recipient of the award would only get the delta between the value at grant date and payout date or exit date. In the full value case, they would get the value of, we'll say, the stock at grant date plus any appreciation value. So that's a little bit of a twist there. And then you'd want to think about either a number of units or kind of stock percentage equivalent that's going to be covered by the plan. There's no magic here, but typically we see something like 10 to 15%, maybe similar to like a stock option plan. So a small relative percent of the total equity pie in the company. Then you'd want to select a valuation method. Obviously, with public companies, that's not very difficult. This presentation is focused on private companies because that's typically what we see with public companies. It's a lot easier. They have market price. They have 30-day trading numbers. It's fairly easy for them to do. But with private companies, you're typically choosing between third-party appraisals or some sort of agreed upon formula based on the company's own financial statements, using revenues and net income and perhaps EBITDA and other figures. The next big category would be describing what happens when the person leaves. So this termination of service, so either retirement or death or disability. Is that going to be the same as perhaps an exit event? So the company needs to decide how it's going to treat that. To the extent there are any restrictive covenants, I don't see those that often, but that is something to think about. And then related to termination of service or exit, think about what happens upon the sale of the company. Will there be installment payments, all at once payments? Is there interest on those payments if they're installment? What if there's an increase in value during that installment period? So those are all issues to think about. Next slide, please. So now I'd like to jump into just an example of how phantom stock could be used. This is a hypothetical example, but I think it gives a decent idea of how phantom stock is useful. So here we have a private company with two owners. They each own 50%, and they have three key employees, the highly compensated category folks. And these owners have decided they don't want to give out equity. They want to retain equity. They don't want additional shareholders voting on key decisions, but they really want to retain these key employees in a way that is economical and makes sense for the business. So they want to provide some sort of financial incentive for folks to remain. And as Kevin was saying, these amounts can be pretty significant depending on the time frame and the growth of the company. So next slide, please. So here, the owners have decided that their payout event is going to be essentially a termination of service or a sale of the company for more than $15 million. So perhaps the company is currently valued at $10 million. So if there is an exit event, meaning more than half of the equity is acquired by a third party, then that would be a payout event that those 3 employees would be entitled to some dollar amount. And termination of service, in this case, they would define as what we covered, essentially resignation, death, or disability. And this creates a guaranteed payment situation at the payout event. Subject to actually the last point, which is these are guaranteed payments unless the employee is terminated for cause. Sometimes you see in these plans that there is a clawback provision. That's not all of the plans, but the concept being if there is a payout and for some reason information comes up regarding inappropriate behavior of the key employee, then perhaps some portion or all of that payout would be taken back. The key employees are paid out in cash on the payout event. So one of the issues that the company has here, and in most instances, unless we're talking about very well-funded large public companies, is thinking about how they're going to be able to pay an employee out, especially if there's not an exit event and it's just a resignation or end of service by disability. So thinking about how you're going to come up with the cash is a significant issue. And in this case, the payout amount would be based on the full value of the stock at the grant date, whenever that was, plus the appreciation of value from the grant date to the payout date. So either the exit scenario or the termination of service. And those amounts, of course, can be pretty significant, especially if the key employee is getting perhaps 5% or more of the effective equity of the entity. Next slide, please. And then finally, just briefly, and this is its own topic to be covered by other folks more skilled at taxes than I am. But one of the big advantages of a phantom stock plan is, unlike options and some of the other things out there, is really the tax impact is only felt at payout. So that's a nice advantage. Section 409A compliance is required, so like other deferred compensation plans, but that's typically not that difficult. And ERISA compliance is required to stay out of the rules that Kevin and Jeremy mentioned before. And finally, the nice thing about it is that the company can deduct the payout amount whenever we have that payout event, that exit. So it is fairly efficient. The employee, unfortunately, is taxed at ordinary tax rates, but you can't have your cake and eat it always. So next slide, please. And now we're at questions. And next slide, please. Yep. Great.
Kresimir, what do you find is the impetus for employers adding the phantom stock plan? What do you find is the things that's going on that drives them and their employees to want a plan like this?
Well, I think I think it's really kind of the things I talked about. They want to incentivize. They want to incentivize key employees, but they don't want to really bring them into the like the key ownership group, right? They might be very highly compensated, but they don't want to bring them into the ownership circle, if you will, right? And so so the phantom stock plan is perfect for that, because it creates a financial upside with really no obligation to the key employee at all. And it, in a sense, does create a win-win. So the motivation is really retaining those folks, but not elevating them into ownership. So I think it's that providing that financial incentive piece, but not bringing them in to ownership. And it's perfect for that, right? Is essentially sharing, the financial success of the company and the business with other folks without making them a shareholder.
That's great. And I think of the phantom stock in the same way when I juxtapose it with executive comp or the items that we laid out earlier, which is ours are really for well-established, long-serving companies where I often think of phantom stock as more useful for fast-growing companies that are looking to increase enterprise value dramatically over a period of time. Is that a fair sort of justification of using the phantom stock?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like, if you think of phantom stock and stock appreciation rights, they're kind of kissing cousins, kind of in the same bucket. The only difference is what you get at the end, cash or actual stock. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, if this is a situation where the business has been around for 20 years, it's not growing, it's not going anywhere, it's not going to get sold, then yeah, it's not a super attractive option, right? It's really meant for situations where the owners and key employees, where everybody believes that, this thing is really going to go up in value, right? It's going to be a 30, 50, 100%, 200% increase in value, right? That's where it gets interesting, because otherwise, it's not going to make a difference. And also, because it's based on the value of the stock, if the company is just kind of, flatlining like this, it's really, it's not even worth thinking about, right? Because if there declines in performance or something like that, then that value is going to actually go down. So the value of the company, the value of the stock is going to go down. So yes, absolutely, it's really ideal for situations where everybody expects significant growth.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that.
You brought up the quick question. You brought up the concern about these companies may not have enough cash on hand for those payouts, right? The first thing I would think about would just be grabbing a loan. But what are some other ways that you've seen companies make those payouts?
Yeah, I mean, loans, life insurance, those are, the common ones. I mean, to be honest, some of the planning hasn't been great around that. But I would say loans and life insurance were the main ones. And I think, rightly or wrongly, a lot of times the owners assume there was going to be a pretty nice exit. So that's going to be the event, right? That provides the liquidity.
Got it.
But yeah, I don't know that the planning is great every time. I mean, I certainly would advise folks to think about installment payments, so that they don't get themselves into a situation where there's no cash available to make that payment. I mean, the defense is always, if there really isn't cash available, then it has to get paused until there is, because the board cannot make a payout in a situation that would create insolvency in the company, right, under statute. So but I think there isn't enough planning around that. And that's certainly an area where I think you guys can assist.
I would think that installment payments would almost be better for the employee as well, especially if it spreads out the tax liability, right?
Yep. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, the same issue comes up in buy sells, frankly. It's, you know, the funding mechanisms. And I would say the same thing. I don't think there's enough planning for those as well. You know, when they're significant, you know, payouts required, I don't think there's enough planning. I mean, you see life insurance, people talk about loans, but honestly, I think many clients are just kind of winging it.
When we see the industry studies on buy-sell agreement planning, we see right away that about 40% of companies have no planning whatsoever. So we do 520s. So 20% of 100% have done some planning, but it's significantly out of date. Then 20% have done planning, but they haven't funded it. So you have 40 with nothing, 20 out of date, 20 up to date, but not funded, and then 20 funded. And what we mean by funded is what happens if one of the events occurs? Where do you come up with the money? And to your point, Kresimir, life and disability income insurance is usually paired with those plans, but it needs to be managed. It needs to be talked about annually. And so we often find plans where the insurance values are substantially lower than the real value of the business because they wrote those policies 15 years ago when they were just starting out, and now the business is worth $10 million. And if someone were to pass the need $5 million, and they have a $250,000 policy. And those are some of the scenarios of sort of out to date planning where the client hasn't followed good corporate governance year to year and come back and reviewed the agreements and reviewed the underlying funding mechanisms. And to your point a moment ago, most companies, we're not going to fund 100% of the buyout via insurance. So they need to make provisions for private note and ensure that if they did have to take a 5-year note, that those cash flows wouldn't, decimate the business, because if it does, no one's getting paid, not the family benefiting or the current owner. So it can be really challenging.
Yeah, it's like that last piece of the puzzle that I think to owners a lot of times feels like an afterthought, but it's a big deal if it's a significant amount. And yeah, if anything happens that makes it challenging to come up with the cash.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Kresimir, go ahead. Sorry, Jeremy.
I was going to say, I see that we're almost at 1 Pacific, and we had this up till 1 o'clock. I just want to take a minute to thank everyone for joining who did. And if you guys have any questions for me or Kevin or for Kresimir, you can just probably reach out to the person who invited you to get the others emails if you guys wanted them, or you guys reach out to, or I guess Kresimir's, I guess all of our information was on the screen at one point too. So if you guys took a snap or a screenshot of it or something.
Definitely.
Cool.
Very good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining.
Okay. Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye.